It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the government's promise to stop using hotels to house asylum seekers. More than 32,000 illegal immigrants are currently housed in hotels, costing more than £1 billion a year. The government says it will put an end to that by 2029. It comes as Sky News witnesses dozens of migrants attempting the perilous journey across the Channel as the French police stand by and watch.
You can see this group over here, about 50 people, now trying to get on board the boat. This process has been going on already for about 20-25 minutes. But here are the police, they're just watching all of this going on.
Well, that pledge on asylum seekers was one of the most eye-catching announcements in the Chancellor's spending review today. We'll take you through the winners and the losers with a real terms cut for the Home Office and suggestions council tax will rise to pay for the police. Plus, police prepare for another night of violence in Ballymena as Northern Ireland's First Minister condemns the disorder as pure racism. And I'll speak to a woman who stole back her own car after it was taken by thieves and the police couldn't come out to investigate. All that and much more on the UK Tonight. The Chancellor caught us off guard today with a pledge to end the use of hotels to house asylum seekers. Announcing her spending review, Rachel Reeves said that emptying the hotels, which currently house more than 32,000 illegal immigrants, to save more than £1 billion a year. Coming up, we'll discuss whether the government can keep that promise and how it will affect the number of small boat crossings. But first, our political editor Beth Rigby has our main report tonight.
Pressure from every angle.
When will we feel better off, Chancellor?
Difficult questions from wherever she looks. But this a Chancellor determined not to be thrown off her stride.
What time you got, Rachel Reeves?
That's a question for the budget in the autumn, but this day matters too. This, the first spending review in 3 years, the moment when the Chancellor decides how to divvy up hundreds of billions to pay for our public services and set the roadmap for Britain and this government for years to come.
Chancellor of the Exchequer to make a statement. Rachel Reeves.
We are renewing Britain. But I know that too many people in too many parts of our country are yet to feel it.
Labour trying to turn the page on a difficult first year in power.
The priorities of this spending review are the priorities of working people. To invest in Britain's security, in Britain's health, and to grow Britain's economy so that working people are better off.
Defence, NHS, economic growth. These are 3 pillars of the Reeves plan. The Chancellor confirming that defence spending will rise to 2.6% of GDP by 2027, and the NHS the biggest winner.
This Labour government is making a record cash investment in our National Health Service, increasing real terms day-to-day spending by 3% per year for every single year of this spending review.
And as for the economy, Reeves allowing billions of borrowing to invest in Britain's infrastructure.
The rule has allowed me to increase public investment by over £100 billion in the autumn and a further £13 billion in the spring. Investment to rebuild our transport networks.
Capital to build new homes.
The biggest cash injection into social and affordable housing in 50 years. A new affordable homes programme in which I am investing £39 billion over the next decade.
And a pledge to end the use of hotels for asylum seekers by the end of this Parliament.
We will be ending the costly use of hotels to house asylum seekers, saving the taxpayer £1 billion a year.
But with public money tight, plenty of losers in this settlement too. The Home Office with a 1.7% cut in its day-to-day budget over the next 3 years, raising questions over whether the Home Secretary can deliver the 13,000 extra police promised in Labour's manifesto. Cuts too for the day-to-day budgets of the Foreign Office, Department for Culture and Local Government, while schools got squeezed. The opposition adamant Reeves won't stick to these plans.
This is the spend now, tax later review.
Because the right honourable lady knows she will need to come back here in the autumn with yet more taxes. And a cruel summer of speculation awaits.
And the unofficial opposition Reform UK looming large in the Chancellor's speech.
And his party have been in Parliament for less than a year, and yet they have already racked up £80 billion of unfunded commitments. They are simply not serious.
From the Commons to the hospital opposite Parliament to sell her big handout to the NHS. You have said that you would never make unfunded spending pledges, but you have this week because you've pledged £1.52 billion additional funding for the winter fuel allowance reversal. People are saying that there will be tax rises this autumn to fund increased spending. What do you say to them?
Well, we're sticking with the means test for the winter fuel allowance. I think that's an important principle. Before any money goes out the door, we will have a budget in the autumn, and we will show in the round, when the Office of Budget Responsibility update their forecast, how everything is consistent with the fiscal rules that I set out as Chancellor last autumn.
You didn't answer on tax.
Well, we'll set out our policies in the autumn, but we made the tax changes that were necessary last year to fund the spending that I've set out today.
A moment that's been months in the making. The Chancellor and Health Secretary clearly happy and relieved today. Laying foundations they hope will turn the government's fortunes around, but it may take years for voters to feel the same. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
More then on the pledge to stop the use of hotels to house asylum seekers by 2029. What exactly does that mean for people who are currently caught in the asylum system? And how is it going down with voters? Our social affairs correspondent Becky Johnson has been finding out.
Closed to the public, now home to dozens of male asylum seekers, this hotel in Peterborough, like more than 200 others around the country, a symbol of a migration crisis that's costing taxpayers billions and shifting UK politics to the right. Bakor from Turkey arrived by small boat 6 months ago. Using a translation app, he told me he'd rather live in a house than the hotel, explaining that he doesn't like having to share a room.
If they stop giving people hotel rooms, will as many people come to the UK, do you think?
No.
No?
No.
Why?
When there's no place to stay, people don't want to come, is his answer. In the nearby city centre, the Chancellor's pledge to end hotel use for migrants prompted mixed reaction.
I'm sure that'll please lots of people.
Is it an issue locally for people?
I guess it is. Everybody's got an opinion on it. We're all human beings. We're all entitled to something. But no, I think it's the right decision.
You'd want to make sure that there was a viable alternative before you did it. But if she can manage that in the right kind of way, that's good. Good for the asylum seekers, good for the local communities.
They've got to put them somewhere, or else they're homeless and then they create more problems. I think they need to have a designated place and secure place.
Is it the right decision for the government to stop using hotels to house asylum seekers? What do you make of that?
I agree with that.
Why?
Well, I don't think they should. People like that shouldn't have them for the immigrants.
There are more than 30,000 asylum seekers currently in hotels, and they keep coming. Even as the Chancellor prepared to deliver her speech, more boats were arriving in Dover.
Funding to cut the asylum backlog will be increased, but that just means more claims will be processed, and around half of people are usually successful, more when you count those allowed to stay following an appeal. That's thousands more people who'll need somewhere to live.
And constant new arrivals will make it impossible to completely clear the backlog, so some form of accommodation will be needed. Serco, that has a government contract for housing asylum seekers, is now looking for private rentals. Potentially competing with locals, it could push prices up, fueling the housing crisis and cancelling some of the benefits from billions being invested building affordable homes. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Peterborough.
Well, as it stands, there seems little anyone can do to stem the number of people crossing the channel on small boats, which has already reached 15,000 this year. On the beaches of northern France, local police are unable or unwilling to intervene. From there, our international correspondent Alex Rossi has this report.
They move quickly across the sand as the day breaks on a beach near Dunkirk. And although the police are present, they do nothing to stop this caravan of people. This is the first chance to cross for many of these migrants, and it will be the last leg of a journey that started months ago.
It's just after 5 in the morning, and you can see this group over here, about 50 people, now trying to get on board the boat. This process has been going on already for about 20-25 minutes. The boat has come from another area along the coast and has come here to pick them up. But here are the police. They're just watching all of this going on. They're not trying to stop them from getting aboard the boat. And this is now being played out over and over again, particularly on days like today when the conditions are very calm. And very soon, of course, this will be another small boat heading towards the UK.
The vessel is dangerously overloaded, floating haphazardly. A baby is yanked onto the boat as they yell out for more people to climb aboard. And although the dinghy is taking on water, which is scooped out with a shoe, the crossing continues as the police on the beach look on, unable or unwilling to intervene. I asked why they did nothing to stop this crossing.
It's for their safety. There are children there. We're not going to throw grenades at them. It's inhumane, but it's sad.
French police protocol and international law mean that once a vessel is afloat, especially with families on board, intervention becomes risky and legally complex. And more migrants are trying to cross to the UK every year. Fleeing war, persecution and economic collapse, they set up camp here. And it is in these places near the beach that they connect with smugglers and wait for a weather window. Ali Reza, who didn't want to be identified, told me he was fleeing persecution in Iran after he changed his religion to Christianity. His dream now is to get to the UK.
Because the Britannia good accept the refugee people and good behavioring for refugee people. But I think
So you think you'll get a good welcome?
Yes. Because many people Iranian, when go to Britannia, this is very good behavior.
Not everybody managed to get aboard the crossing we witnessed. This is a service that is in high demand. So far this year, more than 15,000 people have made it across the Channel. And despite millions spent by the UK government to stop these journeys, this tide of human traffic shows no sign of slowing. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Northern France.
Well, we're joined now by Lauren Starkey, a social worker who works with young asylum seekers, and also Kevin Saunders, former Chief Immigration Officer for UK Border Force in Calais. Good of you to join us tonight here on the programme. I'll come to you first, if I may, Kevin. We heard from an asylum seeker in Becky Johnson's report who said when there is no place to stay, people won't want to come. He seems to think if hotels are taken off the table, the numbers will fall. Is that your view?
No, I don't think it is. I think people will continue to come while there is no big deterrent to stop them coming. Rwanda was a deterrent. That would have stopped them coming. This isn't a deterrent. Not putting them in hotels is not going to stop them coming. And in fact, you're not going to be able to not put them in hotels. They're going to be in hotels for donkey's years. This idea that all the hotel rooms will have been cancelled out by the end of this Parliament is just pie in the sky.
Lauren, what's your view? Because if they're not in hotels, they will be housed somewhere. And so many people have said this is simply moving the problem. The accommodation for asylum seekers has to be there, whether it's bought or rented. It might not be called a hotel, but it will be called something different. It will still cost the government money.
Well, we do have an existing stock of housing for asylum seekers. The problem is that that housing is full, and that is a result of successive governments and their decision making. So the previous government made the decision to stop processing asylum claims whilst they were trying to operationalise the Rwanda plan. That led to an enormous backlog, which meant that the stock of housing we do have for asylum seekers became full, and they needed to use hotels as overspill. Now, the new government has taken good steps in getting the asylum decision moving again, but there remains a really serious problem of the poor quality of Home Office decision making, which has led to a 500% increase in the appeals backlog. So what really needs to be addressed here is the Home Office structures, the Home Office decision making. They need to be focusing less on speed, getting decisions right the first time so that people can move on with their lives.
Yeah, the Home Office has said they're also prioritising processing of asylum claims and issuing more decisions. Is that the key, do you think, then, Kevin?
Well, they need to deal with more cases. But what you're not highlighting is how difficult it is to deal with an asylum case when the person who is making the claim has thrown their documents away, so you don't know who they are and you don't know where they've come from. And that in itself is a problem, because you can't, it's very difficult to do an asylum claim on that basis. And the other problem that we've got, and this is a huge problem, is that we take everybody that arrives off to Manston, but we can only hold on to them in Manston for 24 hours. Well, if you've got over 1,000 people that you want to do an asylum screening interview for, you're not going to be able to do a very good job if you've only got 24 hours to deal with over 1,000 people. So that's why the information that we're getting out is not very good and could be better.
Lauren, in your role as an independent social worker, you know well the processes and the difficulties of processing an asylum claim and making these decisions. Perhaps you can give us an insight into that, because Kevin there is saying it's very difficult because some people simply do not come with any documentation, do not want to tell you where they have come from.
It is difficult, but it's more difficult on the claimant than anyone else, because the threshold for asylum is extremely high. You have to meet certain criteria to be granted refugee status, and you have to prove that you meet those criteria. The onus is always on the claimant. And so what you see are these very, very long, protracted processes in which people go through multiple interviews. A huge amount of expert evidence is required. In the cases I work on, I will write reports, you will get reports from independent psychologists, country experts, people who will really closely scrutinise these claims and say, is this claim believable or not? And in the cases where those claims are found to be believable, we need to be granting those people protection and allowing them to move on as quickly as possible so that they are not stuck living in hotels. Because frankly, the people who would stand to benefit the most from closing these hotels are the British public and the asylum seekers who are stuck in them.
The number's only going one way, and that is up. Kevin, well, the number of asylum applications in the UK hit a new high in the year to March 2025, up 70% from the year before. And we saw there in Alex Rossi's reports, those people on boats, police standing by, letting them get on. You know, that boat couldn't carry any more people. Some were left on the shore waiting for the next boat. This number is only going to go up. So what do you think a viable alternative is?
Right, yes, you're completely right. The number is going to go up because more and more people are coming. I mean, I believe that 5 boats came over this morning up until about lunchtime. So that's about another 300 today, and that was just in the morning. So I don't know what the figure would be by close of play tonight, but it's going to be a biggie, another big one. We need the French to do more. The French are supposed to be trying to stop the people getting in the boats and or preventing the boats getting to the beaches and then trying to destroy the boats. They did have some success with the gendarmerie actually slashing the boats so that they wouldn't go in the water. But now they've even seemed to have stopped doing that.
Lauren, in terms of moving people from hotels into alternative accommodation, Kevin was reflecting there on deterrence, the government trying to get the numbers down, trying to stop those small boats. What would be an effective deterrent? Because, you know, you talk to these people, they're not just numbers, they're individual people, all with reasons for wanting to come to the UK. Is there any effective deterrent for them? What are the kind of conversations that you're having?
So from my experience with people, many of them, when they set foot in those boats, they know there is a risk that they will die. And that is the ultimate deterrent, you would imagine. And when people know there's a risk that they will die and they still do it, common sense tells us very little is going to act as a deterrent. We had the Rwanda plan, it did not act as a deterrent. We've had successive governments all claiming they have the silver bullet that's going to end the cycle of people coming to claim asylum. There is no silver bullet. People move and have always moved and will always need to move. The system we've got is being very, very poorly managed. Nobody disagrees that the asylum system is broken. What we disagree on is the way to fix it. The way to fix it is to allow people safe passage, allow them to apply for visas in France, to step on a Eurostar, to arrive safely, because people keep talking about, you know, we need to process people properly. The asylum system is a processing system. We have got systems in place to process people. What we don't have is a managed system for their arrivals. If we knew who was coming and we knew when they were coming, we could manage the accommodation that they're provided on arrival, end the use of hotels, and speed up the asylum decision-making process.
Kevin, I'll let you come back on that. You were shaking your head.
Yes, I mean, that's quite ridiculous. This idea that we allow safe routes is complete and absolute nonsense. Because if you set up a processing centre in Calais, what are you going to do with the people that don't fit the criteria, who still come across the channel? That just doesn't work. In fact, what we ought to be doing is saying to everybody that you have no entitlement to claim asylum in the UK if you come from France. France and Europe is a safe area. You should have claimed asylum there. You can't go asylum shopping, which we're seeing now. In fact, another TV station actually highlighted it today with asylum seekers who had tried to claim asylum in Germany, Belgium and France, had failed in all of those countries, so they decided they'll go across the channel in a boat and claim in the UK. That is just ridiculous.
OK, well, this debate will continue. Kevin Saunders, former Chief Immigration Officer for UK Border Force, and Lauren Starkey, independent social worker who specialises in working with asylum-seeking children and young people. Thank you for your time. Still to come here on the programme, we have the latest on the riots in Ballymena as police prepare for a third night of violence.
alive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
The Prime Minister has condemned violence in Ballymena, which has left 32 police officers injured. 6 people have been arrested after disorder broke out for a second night. Northern Ireland's First Minister has described the unrest as pure racism. Sky's Conor Gillies has this report.
Ballymena is a place on edge after yet another night of ugly clashes. 36 officers injured as missiles rained down and police were petrol bombed. The aftermath is not pretty either, the streets that became the scene of a rampage. And the doors here display a deterrent, posters acting as a window to the nationality of the occupants as racial tensions flare.
My son, he got his car burnt out last night, so he did. It's a disgrace the way they're carrying on.
But this is a town divided, a rise in anti-immigration talk after the detention of 2 Romanian people over an alleged sex attack.
I don't think they should ever let them into the country, because this country can't even look after the people they've got without bringing a lot of them in.
Fear too for those communities caught in the crossfire.
Terrifying, honestly. I'm scared to get out of the house. I've pursued education here. I've done multiple things to the community, and it's just absolutely heartbroken that it's not the same Ballymena that I had when I first came here.
The unrest here is leaving foreign families frantically looking for a way out. 2 women who did not want to be identified for safety reasons said they were bundling their kids and their belongings into their car and moving out of here immediately.
We have kept in regular contact with the Chief Constable, with the team on the ground there, in terms of the response to what's happening. It's pure racism, folks. There's no other way to dress it up.
It is absolutely vital that the PSNI are given the time they need to investigate the incidents concerned, rather than face mindless attacks as they seek to bring peace and order to keep people safe.
And the police under increasing pressure as they call in help for an extra 80 officers from England, Scotland and Wales.
For the second day, the focus of this mob violence has been upon our diverse communities and the police. This has no place in any right-thinking and civilised society. Let me say in the clearest possible terms, this senseless violence is utterly unacceptable.
As the clean-up continues at homes destroyed, it could be in vain as this town strains under simmering tension. Conor Gillies, Sky News, Ballymena.
The government says it has struck a deal with the EU to ease trade and travel between Gibraltar and Spain after years of post-Brexit negotiations. Foreign Secretary David Lammy says the deal will help jobs and growth while protecting the UK's sovereignty.
This is a good arrangement that deals with the complexity of the current arrangements that mean that people have sometimes queued for hours and has harmed the certainty that business needs. And it deals with the issues that arose as a result of the United Kingdom leaving the European Union.
Well, our political correspondent Serena Barker-Singh joins me now with more detail. Serena.
Yeah, well, this is running slightly under the radar today because of the spending review, but it's significant nonetheless. Now, Foreign Secretary was in Gibraltar, as you've just seen, meeting the territory's First Minister, but also counterparts in the EU and also Spanish negotiators to secure this deal. Because, of course, Gibraltar is a British territory, but it does have self-governing in all areas except for defence and foreign policy. So essentially this new deal struck today is set to allow thousands of Spanish workers to continue entering British territory without checks. And in return, Gibraltar residents retain the freedom of movement in the EU that they had before Brexit. Now, this deal has been in the works for a long time. So the previous government, the Conservative government, was trying to secure this deal. It's been about 4 years and they were unable to do that. But the Labour government have done this today, and there are a couple of reasons why. Essentially, the Labour government have long said they want closer ties with Europe, and the EU warned just last month that this deal had to be secured in order to talk about other issues. And then also how this would work practically is similar to a deal that's in place for the Eurostar, for example. So travellers at St Pancras Station have to go through British and French passport control before boarding trains to France. So what this also will mean is that UK citizens will have to show their passport in Gibraltar to Spanish border guards. Now, that may come up against opposition with the Conservatives and potentially reform. But what this is today is yet another step from the government in what they say is resetting the UK's relationship with the European Union since Brexit.
Serena, thank you. Still to come here on the programme, we'll be speaking to a woman who took matters into her own hands when her car was stolen and the police weren't able to help. Let's return now to the spending review, and police leaders say that their budget shortfall will continue to grow, despite the Chancellor setting out a 2.3% rise in spending per year. It's not the only department losing out, as our economics and data editor Ed Conway explains.
So what are the key things to take from this spending review? Well, there's an awful lot of numbers, but let's just dig through some of them. And first of all, we'll start with the big picture. What is this really all about? Well, look, this is showing you the state of the public finances, essentially. That is the tax money that comes in to the Exchequer, £1.2 trillion. That is spending, so £1.35 trillion. And you can tell this one is bigger than this one. Spending is bigger than receipts, which means the government needs to do borrowing. Now, normally when we're talking about these big set-piece events, a lot of it is about tax, a lot of it is about borrowing. But in this case, it's a spending review. So it's mostly about this, and actually not the entire bar here, because a large chunk of that is stuff that isn't covered in the spending review. It's called annually managed expenditure. That is things like benefits, debt interest, pensions, a lot of it. Actually, what we're talking about is this, departmental spending. This is what the spending review is really about. And actually, you can break down the amount of spending the government does into two quite important and distinct chunks. You've got current spending, so day-to-day spending on things like nurses' salaries, for instance. And then you've got investment, this smaller slice here. Now, that's spending on building things. It's spending on investing for the future. And perhaps unsurprisingly, that was the bit that the Chancellor wanted to talk about an awful lot in her speech, because that was where a lot of the extra money is going. And actually, if we kind of break that down, when it comes to that investment spending, there are some clear winners. So defence, a lot more money for defence, a lot more money for transport as well, and science innovation as well. So these are the areas where a lot of the extra money was spent, money that needs, it should be said, to be borrowed. But if we go back to the big picture again, as you can see, by far and away, the biggest chunk of what the government spends its money on, or our money on, is current spending, day-to-day spending. And here, it's kind of interesting. OK, so what we got from the government, this is showing you day-to-day spending in the years that we're in at the moment and then future years. We knew how big the total was going to be in each of these years, off into the future. What we didn't have and what we just got is the breakdown. So we can actually break down these years. And this is the new information. This is basically what the spending review is about, showing you how much of this money goes to health, how much of it goes to defence, the Home Office, education, and so on. And there are some interesting takeaways here. If we look just at who are the biggest winners and the losers when it comes to this day-to-day spending, well, look, the biggest winner of the big departments, it should be said, health and social care. No surprises there, and actually that's kind of in tune with what we've had recently. Then justice, which has had a tough time in recent settlements, but now that does a little bit better this time around. But look at some of the losers. In particular, look at the Home Office. So some big question marks given Home Office funding down by 1.7% about whether you're going to have enough police officers in the coming years. But even within these supposed winners, there are some question marks, OK? So one of these 0.7%, that's education, OK? So it looks like it's positive. But now if you break it down year by year, so we'll break down those numbers year by year, and you can see that big picture disguises the fact that it's really punchy increases in spending in the first few years, and then real terms cuts towards the end of the forecast horizon. So a little bit of small print there. But the big picture, really, if we take that back there, remember that it's all about that, the stuff that we've learned about in the spending review. But the big picture for the government is not just about that, it's about the whole pie. And that is getting bigger and bigger. There's question marks over there whether there may well have to be tax rises in the future, and indeed whether there might have to be borrowing in the future. So we may be talking about taxes, not just spending, in the coming months.
Soft eye. Now, it's an all too common occurrence, leaving the house to get in the car, only to find it has been stolen. More people have to accept that the vehicle is gone for good, but not one couple in West London. Mia, Forbes, Peary and Mark Simpson had a tracker on their car, and when police said that they couldn't investigate, the couple took matters into their own hands. And Mia joins me here in the studio to tell us all about it. Mia, it's good to see you. This is quite the story, because so many people will have experienced this. You sort of woke up one morning, went out to get into your car and couldn't find it.
Yeah. And it's not like it has a white line around the space where it was. So you walk around for a while feeling a bit lost, and wondering, did you park it somewhere different? So then I gave my husband a quick call and I was like, did you move the car? Did you park it somewhere different? And he said no, but we felt quite sure that it hadn't been stolen because we have an immobiliser in it.
Not just one, two.
Two immobilisers.
You'd had a car stolen before, so you took all the precautions.
We did. And we had an AirTag in it. So my husband looked up the AirTag, And he was really surprised when he saw it in Chiswick. So then we knew that it had been stolen.
So for those who don't know West London very well, how far away was that from where you'd parked the car?
It's about 3 miles.
3 miles. So it had been stolen, taken there. How did the thieves get it if it had 2 immobilisers on it?
We imagine, we don't know, but we imagine that they picked it up on a flatbed and moved it. And then they did some quite sophisticated work, from what we understand, on a computer trying to bypass the first immobiliser, and they got through that one, but they didn't get through the one that we had fitted separately.
Well, this is the car in question. This is your husband, Mark. Having found it, getting back into the car. You do what anyone would do when your car is missing. First of all, you call the police, right?
Yeah.
What was their response?
They said that they might send a patrol car round, and if they did, they would tell us what they found. And so that felt a little bit uncertain to us. And I really I've been invited to do a TEDx on polarisation. I'm a mediator, so I don't really want to polarise further and bash the police. But it was quite an uncertain response, and I think these are very difficult times. So we thought, OK, let's go to where the tracker is. And I wasn't sure whether we would just find the AirTag on the streets, because I think at the moment we get used to kind of feeling disappointed, having things go wrong and not being able to fix them. So we were really relieved when we got there and we saw the car as it is in the picture there.
And you literally stole it back?
We literally stole it back. In fact, we couldn't start it because they'd messed around so much with the immobilisers. So we got someone to come with a flatbed truck and move it back. And actually, we had to show them our ownership documents because they didn't want to be stealing a car.
Because you were doing it in broad daylight, whereas the first set of thieves did it in the dead of night. What was the Metropolitan Police's response to your response? Because they did say to you effectively, keep us updated as to how you get on.
They did say keep us updated. They said dial 101 and let us know if you find it or if you don't find it or if you need any help. So we called them on 101 and let them know what had happened and that we'd found it. Yeah.
And you and your husband are very understanding of the pressures on police forces in the UK, the Metropolitan Police in particular. Met figures show there were over 33,500 offences of theft or unauthorised taking of a motor vehicle in the capital in 2024. There were only 326 positive outcomes, which can include a charge or a caution from these cases, representing a success rate of lower than 1%.
Wow.
Which, when you think about car theft in the capital, and we all know someone whose car has been stolen, given those figures, you're obviously very lucky to get your car back. But when you think about the pressures on the Met, how do you feel about that? Because we hear more and more about car thefts, phone theft, burglaries, police just not being able to respond in the way they used to, or you would expect them to.
I think it's very complicated. I think people jump to blaming the police, and there's a lot of comments on the post I originally put up, blaming the police because it really took off. But I think it's just a really tough time, and they're really under-resourced. At the same time, I think what is the disincentive for criminals not to do this kind of thing if it doesn't get punished in some way? So I know the police is going to get a bit more funding, but clearly it's not going to be enough. And clearly, in the economic climate that we find ourselves in at the moment, we can't really just throw money at things. So my feeling is we have to sort of change the conversation, because it's so easy to just blame. And instead, we've got to look at there's a systemic problem. And how do we solve that? And how do we communicate better about it? How do we build community? And I've had a little while to think about this. I thought maybe we should have asked better questions to the police about what we could have done to help them solve it, because they did send a forensic expert after quite a while, but maybe, and by that time we'd fixed it. And that meant that any DNA evidence was damaged. And probably we found out they should have told us not to touch or to avoid touching certain areas. But we could have asked. And so I'm thinking we need to all collaborate more, build more community, and find better solutions.
Well, listen, you did the hard work. You got the car back yourself. I should just share the Met's response here before you go. It says police were alerted to the theft of a vehicle in W14. Officers spoke to the victim, who shared his intention to recover the vehicle himself. An Apple AirTag was inside, allowing the victim to view its location and trace it. The victim was reminded by officers to contact police again as needed, or if police assistance was necessary, at the vehicle's location. At 11:23 hours, the victim confirmed that the police that he had found the vehicle and that it was being recovered by a truck back to the victim's home address. The investigation is ongoing, and officers met the victim on Tuesday, the 10th of June, as part of their inquiries. No arrests have been made at this stage. Mia, it's a remarkable tale. Thank you for coming into the studio to share it with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Sarah-Jane.
Still to come on the programme, from pop stardom to Paddington, the musical. Now McFly frontman Tom Fletcher is helping to raise awareness over the issue of bone density. More details on the way. And in sport, could Thomas Tuchel now be staying beyond the World Cup despite his 3 Lions being slayed by Senegal?
Over there, to your left. There have been airstrikes every day. Hezbollah are very sensitive about us showing any pictures, and we're being hurried away right now. It felt akin to riding into some sort of Armageddon. Many other areas have been hit badly. There are shells coming in every few minutes. Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. It's trying to hit us. That's it. It got us then. There's a lot of action going on. A lot of hits still. We were the first journalists and the only outsiders to reach the site of the attack several weeks after it happened.
We found from the missile.
It's very difficult to see what around here could be conceived of as a legitimate military target. Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, a boat seriously overcrowded. This is one of the most severe viruses in the world. Clearly not had very much to eat at all, a lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake. Whoa! Getting up close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome back. Still to come, the pop star bringing Paddington to the West End stage. We'll get a bit of info ahead of that big launch later this year. But first, David is here with the sport, and we are talking about Thomas Tuchel, who is telling fans not to panic.
Yes, I mean, the context here is important, given the fact that England have had perhaps two of the most underwhelming results of their recent past and under the Thomas Tuchel kind of stewardship. 1-0 winners against Andorra in World Cup qualifying, and then this friendly defeat to Senegal, 3-1 at the City Ground, the first time they've ever been beaten by an African team. But he's also hinted that he wants to stay on beyond the 2026 World Cup. Now, look, we know that Thomas Tuchel has got this contract to the World Cup. He is known as a sort of gun for hire. When he came into Chelsea, it was mid-season after Frank Lampard departed. He managed to get them the Champions League, and the FA have seen his quality and go, well, maybe this is what we need short term. So it's in that context of these two disappointing results, really, that this has been said. But it's also worth framing it in this way. He was asked both what he would do if England won the tournament and what he would do if England didn't win the tournament. He said this. I will always be tempted to stay because I love the group and I love the opportunity. It's an honour to be English head coach. I know what's coming after a huge tournament in England. After the World Cup, it's Euro 2028, which is at least partly held in England. So that the excitement of being manager and head coach at a home World Cup. But what else was he going to say? He wasn't going to say, oh no, maybe after the World Cup it's quits. That would create very, very different headlines that perhaps he wouldn't want, definitely the FA wouldn't want. But it's a way of lifting the mood after these two sort of, let's say, underwhelming results. And, maybe it's kind of what he always would have said anyway. But, still the possibility of Thomas Tuchel staying on after the 2026 World Cup in the USA, Mexico and Canada. And plenty more stories making the headlines as far as football is concerned this evening.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Welcome to number 9 Goodison Road, the Strikers Suite. It's 27 years now since I bought this place. I used to have a box at Goodison. Those days, you used to watch the game through the box, which isn't the right thing to do. So I bought this place, converted the top floor to a flat, and then just, as you see, converted this to a corporate suite. I took the 10 lads from the box over with me, so it started as 10, now we've got 26. It's just a gang of mates who get together. We all throw in the kitties to sort of get our food and our drink and stuff like that. All our memorabilia is based around strikers. But one of our more famous guests was Howard Kendall. Howard lived by me in Formby. And every home game, we used to pick him up, bring him out here. You've seen his chair in the corner. That's the original chairman's chair from the club's first form, and that we call Howard's Corner. We've got a guest book, and there's all kinds of people came in. I thought they came to see me. Obviously not. This guest book is full of autographs, and the day that Howard died is the day that people stopped coming in.
Today's main course, got a potato dauphinoise gratin, got a short rib of beef, which is...
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Now he's the McFly frontman, given the responsibility of taking a national icon from the big screen to the West End. But if writing dozens of hits, being a successful children's author and now the composer behind Paddington the musical wasn't enough, Tom Fletcher is also raising awareness about the rise in poor bone density amongst children. Well, I've been speaking to Tom and I asked him what parents can do to help the situation.
We live in an age of social media and it's at our fingertips. It's really easy to go on and just look for stuff, but you never really know how accurate that is. And I think that confusion has led to this deficiency in a large number of children. And so this whole campaign is really about raising awareness, trying to show parents that it's really just about making some small changes. So just swapping out one of the sugary snacks that your kids eat for a yoghurt that's fortified with calcium and vitamin D. That can make a huge difference in the long run, because those early years when the bones are developing are the vital years. So it's, making a small change can make a really big difference. And, so I'm kind of approaching this as a dad of 3 boys. So I know, it's almost impossible to try and figure out what to feed them all. Not just what's right, but what they like and what they'll eat.
What you can actually get them to eat.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also with this, kind of putting my children's author hat on, and I've rewritten the Humpty Dumpty nursery rhyme with a bit of a twist. So this time he has a great fall, but he's had enough calcium and vitamin D, so his shell is strong enough. It doesn't need to be put back together again.
I see what you've done there.
A fun twist, but actually, it's hopefully raising awareness for, what's actually a really serious issue.
Yeah, cases of childhood rickets have increased by 380% since 2019. More than 1 million children in the UK are at risk of developmental issues due to a lack of nutrients. Are you old enough to remember having milk at school?
Yes, we were talking about this earlier. I remember that. It's like the highlight of the day, getting the milk on the tray and putting...
Were you the milk monitor?
I don't think I ever was.
No, I never got picked to be the milk monitor. I really wanted to be. I always remember it being quite warm, but it was important that you drank your milk. And again, these days, there is a real backlash against dairy, isn't there? Because there are so many alternatives. And yes, people are dairy intolerant or they prefer different things, but that's sneaking into family life, isn't it? And perhaps that's how children children are not getting enough calcium because of the plant alternatives that people like now.
Yeah, definitely. And again, you read some posts that say that is exactly what you should be doing, and then the next time you scroll up, there'll be the complete opposite to that. So it is really about the information that we're all reading and consuming and where you get that from.
Yeah, it's about parents being aware, isn't it, and sort of giving their children the right foods. Well, I can't let you go without talking to you about Paddington the musical.
Yes.
Everyone knows you've been working on this
I feel like we've got the right
quite
colours.
a while now. Yes, very much so. I'd like to say we planned it. It finally comes to the stage, the Savoy Theatre in London in November.
Yes, November 1st.
What can you tell us about it? Because you've been working on this effectively since lockdown, right?
Yeah, I got the first phone call in lockdown. Actually, weirdly enough, we just watched Paddington 2 the night before, just by pure coincidence. So it was like the universe was telling me it was meant to be. But yeah, I got a phone call saying they were assembling a team. It's like I was being recruited for the Avengers. Would I be interested in writing the music and lyrics? And I still can't believe that I got the phone call. And it is just the most incredibly special project to be part of. Michael Bond's amazing books and characters that are loved all around the world, and to suddenly feel responsible for be part of creating this show. It's a real kind of dream come true. And honestly, it is the most magical thing I've ever seen on the stage. And obviously I'm slightly biased, but taking my music out of it, when people see Paddington step out onto the stage, being in the same room physically as Paddington is just... It is so special, and it's honestly going to blow people away.
Yeah, so many people are looking forward to it. To come to our interview today, I came from Waterloo Station, walked through London, and you walk past... Have you seen a Paddington mural?
Yes,
in London, which is... Mrs Brown says that in London, everyone is different, and it means that anyone can fit in. And you think about that message, and that message being given to children at such a young age about inclusion and diversity, and people are different, but we're all the same, essentially. Does that come through in the musical? Because I think that message is something that, resonates right now in the current climate, right?
Now more than ever. I think that's what's so special about Paddington. On the surface, it's this fun, lovable story about a bear who likes marmalade sandwiches, but underneath that, he stands for something. He is a bear that has come from another country to this country looking for a home, looking for acceptance, and that is, so important. And it's, a very real story for a lot of people. So that has absolutely been on our minds. And what's so special about this show is that it's not a show that's just for kids. This is a show for everyone on so many layers. And so whether you are, whether you're 4 and you love Paddington because he's a bear that likes marmalade sandwiches, or if you're 104...
The bear that talks.
Yeah, absolutely, and sings. There is something for everyone in this, and it's a very, very special story that I think people are going to find really moving.
Well, that's all from the UK tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Next up, It's the World with Yelda Hakeem.